how did we want to do this? Speaking of, like, I know you brought that up, Randall. I know in the past, I think last time we just did like,
we did a
each
snake.
person just kind of did their 3, or did we do the snake?
I thought I asked about snake, and then we didn't do that. And you're like, the hell you guys talking about snake?
Yeah,
No. We did a snake with, so we did our our 3 in turn, and then we did the snake back for the resolution.
Yes.
Okay. Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense.
But I'm cool either way.
You have to keep the format.
Ping pong around.
We've established this. This
is
rich
stone, man.
Pursuing Pixel's
lore,
baby.
Yeah. This is what, the third?
Third holiday app.
Yeah.
2.5 years, pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah. Heck yeah. I'm pumped. I'm pretty juiced on the games I got on the slate. I don't have any honorable mentions written down, although I do have 1 or 2 in my head, but I might just piggyback off you guys.
Yeah.
On the honorable mention front, because I think there might be an overlap, at least for some of those. I think we might have overlap between our like picks and if you count our picks and honorable mentions, there's no way we're not going to have at least one game overlapping. I
think you're right about that.
Hey everybody, welcome to Pursuing Pixels. My name's Kevin Portelli, and I'm here tonight with John Hines.
Hey there.
And Randall Nolery.
Hey folks.
And believe it or not, we have made it through 2021, which kind of feels crazy. I feel like we were just like, at least from my perspective, it's like, when is 2020 going to be over? And now it's like 2022 is like already here.
Yeah. When is 2021 going to be over?
Exactly. Yeah. We'll just carry it over, carry the remainder. But yeah, we've obviously been doing these holiday episodes. This is our third, I guess, annual holiday episode that we kind of do to wrap up the end of the year. And we talk about, I guess, I don't know if we did this so much the first year, but we've basically just picked kind of like our 3 favorite games we played, sort of like a game of the year episode, but it doesn't necessarily have to be a game that came out this year. It's just something that we played and talked about on the podcast over the course of the year. So this is mostly just kind of for us to have a good time, and hopefully you enjoy listening as well as we reminisce. And we'll probably go over some, even, beyond our top 3 or whatever, we'll probably talk about some hidden gems, but we
can't help it.
Or maybe not hidden gems, but yeah, some of our, what's the word I'm looking for, or the term?
Honorable
cream
mentions.
Of the crop.
Honorable mentions. Yeah, I was like, why I'm so fixated on the H with the hidden gems. Yeah, honorable mentions. But yeah, I'll probably save my honorable mentions for after I toss the ball in your guys' court, just in case there's a little overlap or anything. But I think it's safe to say that the 3 picks I have here, I think are. I think they're going to be unique. I don't think we're going to have any crossover here. So I'll just get things started. And I know for the most part, like on the podcast, and I was just saying this in the Discord earlier, like I kind of lean into, like, I'm always talking about my action-y, arcade-y experiences that I'm like, I just want pick up and play, get right into the action. And this year, I've still kind of carried that mentality. Like, I just want to get right into the action, give me a bunch of cool mechanics, and let me lay into how those, all interact with one another. But I've been kind of leaning into the more like turn-based games that give me that approach. Like one of the games that is an honorable mention that I guess I will give one honorable mention away off the top, but like Dungeon Death Ball from Matt Glanville is like, it's got that chunky, juicy, like arcadey action that I love that like, it feels like I'm just like, that, it's the action's like my adrenaline's pumping kind of, but at the same time I can sit there and take as long as I want to decide on what I want to do. And there's just no pressure of, as much as I love like nailing some tight jumps in a precision platformer or getting a high score on an arcade game or something. It's just, there's something really, really nice that I've really leaned into this year. Like, just give me some turn-based action that I can like almost puzzle or strategize my way through. So the games that I did want to highlight as, and again, Dungeon Death Ball, a very close contender. I almost like I'm almost only not including it because we've like had Matt on the podcast a couple times, and like I just feel like I've talked about that game so much that I'm like, I don't need to give it a little more time in the sun. Like, it's that close to being in my top 3.
It's tough to pick the top 3. I think that's going to be a theme too.
It is, yeah, it is, and and so I'll just roll into what I got here so far. So the game I wanted to mention first, which is, I believe, a game that did not initially release this year, is Iris and the Giant.
Ooh, nice.
I talked about this game. I originally I haven't played it in a while, to be honest, and I'm actually, part of the reason I wanted to bring it up was to like force myself to dig back into it. I was refreshing my memory on some of the other games earlier today, but with this one, I actually got it originally. I'll probably end up picking it up on Switch, but I got it for free through like Amazon Prime Games or something. And I like reinstalled Windows on my computer, so I didn't have the Amazon Games launcher or whatever. Long story short, I didn't have it on my computer anymore, so I didn't boot it up again. But it's just such a great blend of like strategy and puzzle and deck building, card game, roguelike, like, and not to mention that like the mechanics in and of themselves are great. And then on top of that, it has like just an incredible art style presentation. There's even like a little bit of story, like just the tiniest little like narrative threads that just kind of almost let you like lay your own emotions on top of this little, you know, narrative that's playing along throughout the background that might just like, it'll just like interrupt between like your, you know, if you're progressing to the next floor or the next stage of the tower or whatever, it might interrupt with like just a small little story beat. But yeah, I just can't, I don't want to go too far deep into the mechanics, but I mean, it's just, it is a deck builder in the sense of that you're adding cards to your deck all the time. But one of the ways that it does set itself apart is that you are spending those cards every time you use them. You're not actually like shuffling them back into your deck. So that is one of the things that I really found to be like super compelling and even lean a little heavier into the puzzle and the strategy element of the game, where like you do have to think about, like, you're almost building your deck more in the sense of like, shit, what have I spent too many of already? Like, what do I need to replenish, or what do I need to, you know, as you progress,
resource management kind of.
That's a great term for it. Yeah, that's pretty much what it is. But yeah, it's just such a stunning game. I love every element of it, and it's one that I just found myself. And again, I think we were just talking earlier before we started recording about how we tend to prefer playing games with controllers. But this is a game that you can play entirely with your mouse. Like, you don't need a keyboard at all. So you're just kind of clicking and dragging, moving around. And that's kind of leaning into that, like, kind of like leisurely style of gameplay that I've gotten into this year. It's like, I have my laptop like hooked up to my TV, and I'll just sit there with a wireless mouse, like lounging on my couch with a little side table mouse pad like set up, and it's like, I don't know, it's really fun to play games that way. And Iris of the Giant was kind of the first one that got me into this like mindset where I'm like, man, I've always liked these kinds of games, but now this is kind of like my go-to like genre, I guess.
Nice.
So the game I wanted to mention next, which is still a game that's actually in development, it's called Die in the Dungeon. And this is another deck building dice based game. So again, kind of taking some different hybrids of multiple genres, and then again, like really kind of leaning into that puzzle element. So in this game, you have like a tablet that's essentially a 3x3 square. It's turned on it's turned 45 degrees, so it's like a diamond. But you're essentially like in that 3x3 grid, you're using you essentially like roll or draw a hand of dice at the beginning of each hand, and then you're placing those up to 3 of them, but then they interact with one another, and where you're placing those on the board comes into play. They actually just put out a new update for this game, which I haven't had the chance to try the new update, but they added like 2 new enemies. This was originally a game jam game.
Nice.
And they've really like fleshed it out. Like, they kind of cleaned up some of the backgrounds, and like just I believe they're planning on like going the whole way with this game. Like, they're like, a lot of times with game jam games, there's just kind of like I don't mean this to be dismissive, but just like a post jam update where it's like, okay, we fixed the little bugs like now that the competition's over, or we like, you know, we added like a menu screen, or just like some simple quality of life type things. But this is like a full blown, like, we're going to keep releasing updates. Like, this is version 1.3, and they added a couple new dice to the game, a couple new enemies. Like I said already, I think they tweaked the final boss battle. Nice. But yeah, it's like a turn-based. I think even when I had first talked about it on the podcast, they didn't even have the option of like picking which enemy you're going to be attacking. You just, it kind of like defaulted to whatever enemy either had the most health, or however it decided which enemy to attack. But now they've like tweaked the game in that regard, where you can actually pick who you're attacking. But yeah, I haven't played with the new enemies and whatnot, but I'm really excited to see where this game goes. And like, again, it just has some of the most lovely pixel art. They've talked about adding, right now there's only one playable character, like just kind of your default like the game is just kind of is what it is right now, but they're planning on adding like new characters that have, you know, in the same lines that like Slay the Spire has, like each character has their different perks or buffs or stats or, you know, different play styles. So it's just been really awesome to see. And I think these new enemies, like one of the things that I wouldn't say was a gripe, but just as something that like when you're playing the game, you're almost sitting there thinking like, man, it would be cool if some of these enemies like attacked your board or like your tablet, like the play space that you're playing in. And I think some of these new enemies do, like they'll put like a jelly tile. I was reading a little bit of the update, so I don't remember exactly what they were called, but there were definitely some new additions to like how the enemies can interact with like where your dice are on the board and whatnot. But again, it's like a really great combination of puzzle and strategy, which is what I've really been leaning into all year long. So lastly, you know, I'm going to cheat for my number 3 slot. You know, I got to get a little, and it's sort of a cheat, sort of not. I don't know. I'm sure you guys will consider it kind of a cheat. But I'm going to give it to PUNKCAKE games, PUNKCAKE Délicieux in general. It's not one game in and of itself, but their games do feel like such a cohesive piece of, even though they're all individual pieces of art, I guess. Or, you know, individual games that aren't necessarily tied together in any way, but they're doing a monthly Patreon where they're releasing a game every month. And I've talked about crazy. Pretty much, yeah. And they did take November off for that matter, but they're working on a game right now. I guess the game that I'll kind of highlight here in this top 3 segment is the Ratch's Den, because it's actually probably the game I haven't spent much time talking about on the podcast here. I just kind of like threw it out after we interviewed Remy on the podcast, who is one of the developers on the team over there. But yeah, the Ratch's Den, kind of in that same style. It's like a turn-based tactics roguelike. You're actually playing as like the villains, sort of like the minions, and you're trying to protect the Ratch in your den, and you're just kind of like digging out. It kind of plays out in like a series of turns where it's like the minions' turn, then it's the Crusaders' turn, which are like the heroes who are trying to take down your Ratch and your minion, and then it's the Ratch's turn, who will, like, every year that goes by, which is a year is like a turn in the game, you like the Ratch can either like revive all of your minions if any of them have died, or can refill all their health to full capacity if they're not dead yet, but they've been depleted, or can produce a vial, which is like a separate type of currency that you can use in the shops. And like essentially what I really love about the game is like it's one of those games where like you're basically just pressing up, down, left, or right to move, and that's like a turn. But like when you're in your safe zones, like, so if once you've carved out a room and like, okay, once you carve out a certain number of tiles, then you can build a room. So like you get to pick one of 2, or sometimes you can upgrade and then pick from one of 3. But like, let's say you get to pick from like, okay, I can build either like a marketplace or the school. The school is going to let my characters like level up and upgrade to a new like character class, and like that I'll get to pick from. And then later on, you can build like, I think it's the library that makes the players learn quicker in the school. So they learn twice as fast in the, like, when you're going in, like, because it takes typically one turn to like basically just look at the book and learn something, I guess. So it just moves a little faster, like filling up your stamina bar for leveling up and whatnot. But yeah, I just like what I've really found, and I've talked about this with all their games, like they're just infinitely replayable in a multitude of ways. Like number one, like almost every game has like a beatable version where it's like, or like a mode where like you can beat the game, but then there's also a version of the game where it's like, here's like kind of an endless mode, or here's a bunch of separate challenges you can try to, just to make the game a little more challenging, or just twist the kind of core goal that you're going for. But I just have found everything that PUNKCAKE has done to be, they're the games I keep on my computer at all times. Like I mentioned, I had to reboot and reinstall Windows, and the first games I reinstalled on my computer were all 5 PUNKCAKE games.
There you go.
Like instantaneously. And the other games, just real quick, are Anticrypt, Metavax, Damocles Gaze, and Spectrum Forces, which many of those are shoot 'em up games, but they are kind of veering a little bit away from that. Their next game looks like it's going to be some kind of a puzzler, almost like a Wario's Woods kind of vibe. Okay. To the puzzle, like a little platforming puzzler. But yeah, I can't rave about their games enough, and like it just speaks to me kind of in the Ratchet's Den a little bit is speaking to that turn-based style. Their other games are definitely leaning more into my action arcadey sensibilities, but man, I just can't. I couldn't not spend some time highlighting their stuff in this episode here, but I do have some honorable mentions that I'll get to if we cover them with you guys. But for now, I'll toss it over to John.
I was going to say, there's not a chance in hell that we have any overlap with our honorable mentions. So you might be saving yourself for nothing, but
yeah.
Because my honorable mention for this year, which is something that I honestly forgot happened this year because time is kind of difficult to keep track of in the past couple of years.
A concept. Yes.
Yeah.
But this was the year that I got unabashedly and wholeheartedly into the Dark Souls series, and specifically 2 and 3 were, as we were talking about before we started recording, when we were thinking of games that I have put in well over 100 hours into, and each of them I can easily say the both satisfy that requirement.
Oh yeah.
I just loved, well, I loved them after the first 10 hours or so. The first 10 hours of every Souls game is a miserable experience that I hate every second of.
Oh, okay. Good to know.
Yeah, and then after that,
I'll never be playing those.
One of my favorite games of all time. So
yeah, I could see it.
You just kind of have to eat your veggies before you can have your dessert, and then you just have an incredible series that I am looking forward to playing again, because I stopped playing it because the PS4 I borrowed from DJ would overheat and just power overheat. No, it's not. I'm exaggerating. It just heats the entire apartment when it's going, because that fan does not stop. So
nope.
It's the cold winter months, so I can play it again.
Nice.
So I'm excited to go back into the Souls series.
Plus, you get that nice box fan noise, so that's nice too. Yeah,
that's shocking that was this year.
I can't believe. Honestly, I can't believe it, because I've spent so much time in that series.
Right.
But another series that is in my top 3 for this year that I had a passing experience with and would not have called myself a fan of the series until this game, which is Monster Hunter Rise. Another game that satisfies the well over 100 hours of playtime. But this was the game that, like, it's the meme on the internet of like, oh, this is the easiest game to get into Monster Hunter, and I don't believe that's ever true for any Monster Hunter game, because I played like 60 hours of Monster Hunter Generations and our Ultimate. I don't even remember which one I played. And then I played 60 hours of Monster Hunter Rise, and I don't think I even got it at that point. And it was only after I had played my first multiplayer experience with a friend who I'd been trying to coordinate, like, we should play games. And we're like, okay, let's play Monster Hunter. And he basically walked me through, like, hey, this is what you need to be focusing on. This is what you need to do. And then I actually started playing the game that I had spent 120 hours playing the series up into that point. And honestly, once that was unlocked in my brain, like, it became a game that I adored and like just constantly played, and it's never stopped. There's never nothing to do in that game. There's always a new weapon skill tree or a new armor skill tree that you can like continue to craft and like go down and hunt more monsters in different combinations and at different ranks and skill levels. And it, like, I'm finally at the point where I'm getting the current updates where they'll add new challenges and new monsters, and like I'm at the point where I can go in, and what I'm doing most of the time when I'm not, hunting a specific monster for an armor set or a weapon upgrade, is I'm just going online and purposefully going to lower level players and helping them through some of the more difficult. And it's because that was what I needed to do. Like, I could not advance to the higher ranks unless I was teaming up with other people. Totally. And there were people who had hunter ranks of like 100 more than me as opposed to just 3 or 4. And it's just really satisfying and fun to do. because it's just a satisfying game to play like endlessly, because it's not simple, but it has its core mechanics and it doesn't really deviate from them.
Yeah. That they've been refining for how many years now over that many games.
God. And the controls, once you get used to them, feel so satisfying to like, it's similar to Dark Souls. Like, you have to, you cannot engage on it unless you're engaging on its terms. And once you can, and once you do, it becomes a great game.
Yep.
Are you still playing any multiplayer with that at all? Or
yeah, I'm still logging on occasionally because they keep adding. They just added a new thing today, I think. Where they added an extra mode or things that you can unlock. So I'll be logging into that game continuously.
That's awesome. My
second game, which is a series that I am very well acquainted with and very much in love with, is Metroid Dread. And that was just everything I wanted from a 2D Metroid game.
Yeah, baby.
Like, I had been, since Samus Returns for the 3DS, I was like, oh, this is such a great game that I never want to replay again, because it's just a nightmare to play on the 3DS, even though it did control really well.
Yeah.
Like Samus Returns had
a cramp session.
Yeah. And like was very difficult too. Like the final 3 bosses in Samus Returns, I was like, I just don't want to replay this ever again. Oof. And like, as soon as I beat Metroid Dread, I kind of had the same feeling where it's like, oh man, the final gauntlet of like basically the second half of the bosses in that game were really brutal, but it took really good parts from Other M, took really great parts from like Samus Returns. Like, it was a great meld of like ideas that they've been introducing throughout the series, like, and just really making it into a really well crafted and compact game, because the Metroid series is a series that's kind of intentionally made to be speedrun. And so when I beat the game in my, I don't know, 12 hours, or I don't remember what my initial one is.
I think you said like 10, 12. Yeah.
Something around that. Maybe 8. I don't know. Something. But like, it's a short game, and it's like already I'm getting the itch to replay it and thinking like, maybe not on hard. I don't think I can deal with like the extra like, because already when a boss it's basically 3 hits, it doesn't matter that you have 10 energy tanks.
No,
it's 3 hits.
It's a hard
It does
game.
not matter.
Yeah.
No, I will tell you too. I beat this game just recently, and they said, "Oh, hard mode's unlocked." Get the hell out of here! What do you mean hard mode?
No, I didn't even unlock
hard
everything in the like easy mode or normal.
That's kind of cool though. Like, that's, to me, that's like exciting only in the sense of like, I mean, you know me, I never beat games anyways, but like, I feel like Nintendo as of late has kind of leaned way more into the like, hey, you've died 10 times on this level. Do you want us to beat it for you?
Yeah.
Instead of, and like not having any kind of hard mode, and they do a pretty good job of like, the collectibles are kind of the hard mode sort of situation. But I really like that they kind of like, they just kind of went for like, hey, we're kind of making this. This isn't in the Nintendo DNA, if that makes sense. I don't know. It feels like they just kind of leaned into making what they wanted to make without being a Nintendo thing.
It's an incredible game, and I just love it, and I can't wait. Like, it definitely scratched an itch, but I still just want Metroid Prime 4. One day, I hope springs eternal. But my third game for this year is a game that Randall first mentioned in 2020. So it's been on the radar for a bit, but I picked it up this year and played it far to its completion of Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 and 2.
Yes.
And God, what an absolute flawless remaster.
Yes.
Of like in every sense of the word. Like,
yes.
It just felt exactly the same, but
it's nuts.
It was improved.
It's crazy.
I've never played a remake or a remaster that just is so honestly perfect.
They nailed it.
It's the best. Like,
there's something to be
everything
said
I
when you
could've
can just
asked for.
dive right back in, like exactly how you remembered it, you know?
Yeah,
It's exact.
perfect, like to a T. And it's
Yes.
like all the levels are like yes, there's little like upgrades, like yes, they look better, and yes, you can like the skaters look better, and there's more options for them. But like
New
it's the same game.
skaters. Yep.
It's the same. It's all I wanted. I didn't need anything. They didn't need to overhaul it. They just needed to get it dialed in perfectly for like a new generation with like up-res graphics, I mean, on the Switch, the frame rate is not good. So if you're looking for peak performance, get it on like a different system. But for someone who doesn't care, like it is perfect. Like,
Hey, there's something to be said for portable Tony Hawk too, though.
honestly, yeah, God,
Yeah.
And even again, I always think about like, portability. Like, am I really bringing the Switch with me anywhere all that much? Yeah, not so much. But John and like, or Randall, in either of your cases, like, hey, like Tina or Lauren's like watching something on TV, and like I can still kind of hang out and be in the same space, but I'm also like kind of doing my thing and playing a mindless game like Tony Hawk at the same time. Like, so like even if it's not portable per se, like just being able to fire up those quick 2-minute runs, like
God, yeah.
let's go, let's do another one. I know you said, John, the loading times like to load into a level can be a little long, but then once you're in it,
I'm just
they're
playing
just
it
like,
over
boom,
and
let's
over
go,
again.
let's go.
Right.
Yeah, and that's what those games are meant to be anyways. Like, I want to outdo my score. So
Yep.
man, I this is a game I don't know why I don't own on multiple platforms, if not at least one, but I still haven't picked this one up.
They just
worth it.
nailed it.
Worth every penny.
It is.
But
Yeah,
Randall,
and that's awesome to hear too, that it shines on Switch as well, because I feel like a lot of people tend to kind of lean into like, oh, it doesn't, you know, I seem to hear a lot that it's not great on Switch, but I feel like people are just a little picky.
Yep.
have low standards, then you're never disappointed. But Randall, why don't you take it away on your game of the years? Games of the year.
Games of the year, and I'm obnoxious, so I have a million ones that were honorable mentions.
I love it.
And like as I've said a million times, this is really honestly my first year on this podcast where I like really could play video games. So that was cool.
Right.
So this was very difficult to make this list this time around. So a few honorable mentions. I'll keep it to a few. The first of which being Ori and the Blind Forest, which I actually played first in 2020, dropped off for practically a full year and picked back up. We talked about it in 2020, as we talked about earlier this year too. But beating that game, I was like, oh, this is real good. And I'm so glad that I picked this back up, and it was a great excuse to pick it back up on the Series X, where it looked even better and loaded even faster, yada, yada. It's just a great Metroidvania. Moon Studios just like nailed it on that game. Real great. If you want to hear more, there's podcasts where I've talked about that. We've all talked about that plenty. So
yeah, it's a great one, and yet another one I need to go back and finish.
Yep, I would recommend it for one that I will mention in further down my list. But another honorable mention, and one that maybe Kevin was also alluding to as maybe some crossover potential, is Wario Land.
Not what I was thinking of.
Yeah.
But okay. Nice.
Yeah.
A great game. Yeah.
Yes. So a game that like I said at the time, had never played during its day, 94, whatever, despite being a big Game Boy guy and playing the other Super Mario Land games. But man, Wario Land is awesome. I love that game. Like, it is real good. And one of the best platformers on the 8-bit hardware on Game Boy. Like, they nailed it. Like, late era Game Boy game.
It's
real
top
good.
notch stuff. I think before we started recording, I mentioned that I even because we talked about that recently, I fired up Wario Land 2 and 3, just to kind of get a little quick taste of okay, this is what I'm going to be probably checking out soon-ish.
Yeah.
And I was immediately man, I want to go back and finish more of that original Wario Land. It was just nothing against 2 and 3, but it was just kind of I need to get a little further in. I think I was on World 3.
I'm with you.
Where I left off, but man, Wario Land is good stuff. Really top-notch level design.
I'm with you. A top-notch level design, and I agree. I like it better than 2 and 3.
Okay,
I
good
like
to
the
know.
format of the original Wario Land better than 2 and 3.
Yeah, it's just got all the nice touches of like the overworld map and because 2 like kind of threw you right into the mix of like, oh, you're just in a level right off the bat, and then it just kind of goes level to level. Again, I only played for a few minutes,
And they're more kind of like puzzle games in a certain sense, I suppose. So like the stakes are a little bit lower, and you're finding secrets and just collecting the coins for the most part versus the original Land where you can die a little bit easier, and there's more combat aspects to it, I suppose.
It's a really good balance of puzzle and and action, because it still has that arcadey action gameplay, but it does have some puzzle solving still too.
Just really good like momentum feel in that game. Like
that charge bash all day.
So good. It's so good.
Yeah,
just
especially when you get
really
the jetpack. Get the jetpack and you're just zipping across levels. Oh, it's so good.
Again, like if we're gonna set up some Wii U's, it's gonna give me an excuse to pull Wario Land Shake It from my Wii library and put that sucker back in.
Give me an excuse. Another beautiful game, man.
Yeah, maybe take that one a little more seriously.
I think Feel Good. Yeah, I think so. Yeah,
I think you're right. Yeah.
Which they've really put out some impressive platformers over the years between the Woolly World and all the Yoshi games and Epic Yarn, and man.
Yeah. I'm trying to look it up, but I can't make it fast enough on this other computer.
Let's just say I'm right.
You're right. Good feel. Good feel.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So the last honorable mention that I'll get into, this was the toughest one. This is basically like my number 4 pick, and I was just like fretting this, is Metroid Fusion.
Okay.
Yeah, baby.
Fretting, like it's got to be in my top 3, and it just wasn't quite.
Yeah,
like God, but I have to talk about it.
Too many good games.
Yeah, like Metroid Fusion was so good. Like one of my favorite Game Boy Advance experiences. Like, and just a really, really good just Metroid experience.
Talking about dread in a Metroid game, let's talk about Fusion.
Honestly, yes. And so much of Fusion influenced Dread.
Yeah.
So much. Like the foundation of Metroid Dread is Metroid Fusion.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm so glad that I played through it this year before Dread came out, before I even knew Dread was announced.
Yeah.
You timed that perfectly, just by chance, but timed that perfectly.
Like, hell yes. And again, I credit that to John. That was thanks to John.
I never shut up about Metroid. You cannot get me to
Fusion in particular, because I even gave it a try. I think I talked about that on the podcast a while back too, and it was like, it didn't quite grab me, but I'm glad that Randall was like, probably wisely was like, don't listen to Kevin. Let me give this one a try for myself.
Well, I mean, again, that's why it's it's still nomination territory, because it's not a perfect game by any means necessarily, but it just nails its feel, I think, and it nails what Game Boy Advance can do. Within its limitations.
That color palette, that sound design.
Yeah, I love it. Love the color palette. Love the soundtrack. It looks amazing. Love the vibes of that game. Real good. Okay, top 3. So it seemed like you guys started with number 1. So I guess I'll do that too.
I sort of went in no particular order. I sort of saved PUNKCAKE for last, because I was like, I sort of would put them at number 1, but I felt like I couldn't do.
I think I went in reverse order. I think I would put Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 and 2 as my number 1 if we're splitting hairs.
All right, well, let me do the 3 through 1 then. I'd prefer to go that way. So my number 3, the ones that made the cut, starting with number 3, is Micro Mages from Morphcat Games.
Ooh, nice.
I really, really like Micro Mages. And I still have not even played it multiplayer, which I think is one of the main things they designed this game to be. I just played it single player, and I thought, like, oh my God, they just like nailed the platforming feel, just like an action platformer feel on NES in this game. I just love they made that for me. Like, it just feels so good.
Yeah, it really feels like but the way they're able to make it, obviously it's running on an NES, but it really feels like a modern take on an NES
Big
game,
time.
but the fact that it actually is running on NES hardware, or at least it can, but also the fact that in a lot of cases, you know, we do talk a lot about a lot of these games that you can only get in like a physical form or like in a super limited capacity. Like this is a game that you can also get on Steam, and just play on your PC as well. So really cool to see like this game branching out, even though it is like true to the NES, you know.
I mean, so true, developed to the NES that again they fit on whatever it was, like 64 kilobytes.
I think it was 40 some kilobytes, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, just ridiculous. Like, and like that's not even a factor to why I like it so much. It's just an impressive development like aspect of it. Like that's just another factor to show like they developed this for NES, but that's not why necessarily I like it. Yeah, it feels like a modern indie game that is on NES, and that, you know, stands to reason because it released in 2019, and MorphCat just can do no wrong in my eyes.
100%. Yeah.
God.
I can't wait to see what they do next, or whatever they get up to. They're on our radar for sure.
Yep, and to the point where Space Gulls was also almost on my honorable mentions list. Like, I like MorphCat that much as a development studio. So Micromages, check it out.
Also hard to believe that was 2021 as well.
Well, that it was for me, but it came out in 2019.
Well, no, that's what I mean. Like, I can't believe we talked about that within this year.
I know.
Like, that feels like so long ago.
I know. I looked back on our old descriptions to find out, like, oh, yeah, okay, it was. Shoot, all right, cool.
Yeah.
Okay, number 2 is Metroid Dread. Just like John.
All right, little overlap.
Just like John. And my plan was to shout out Metroid Fusion and the connection to it, but we already did that because, it's that good. And the story is just a through line, even though, again, Fusion came out in 2002, and then Dread came out in 2021.
I mean, if we're and what was the gap between... Oh my God, was that a shorter gap between Super Metroid and Fusion?
Yes.
Then my God.
Yeah.
Because that felt like forever.
Yeah,
like that seemed like, man, they're making a sequel
yeah.
so long after Super Metroid.
Yeah.
Good Lord.
And it was a long time.
Yeah.
It was like, shit, why aren't they making another Metroid game? Are they not going to put like one on Nintendo 64? What are you guys doing? And there was no Metroid game for a long time. And then, oh shit, they made one for Game Boy Advance. That's great. And then they remade the original, which is also one that I plan to play. Still haven't played, but have it in the collection.
That's a good one.
Metroid Zero Mission. But we're talking about Metroid Dread, and it's good. And it's hard, but it's good. It's satisfying. It's like rewarding hard as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. They got those button combos down to like,
oh my God. And like,
yes, they're intense, but like once you got it, it's second nature.
It is. And like I played it primarily on the OLED Switch with the Hori, Pad Pro thing. Oh my God. And so it basically like mimicked like the Pro controller essentially, but in handheld mode, and felt so good. And like the control scheme is complex kind of, but it's rewarding too, in that the agility and the options you have as Samus to just like do whatever you need to do and like run around and like jump in the air, and like you're really in combat scenarios in this game. That's really like, you can tell there's some design doc where like, okay, we want some real ass fighting sequences in this Metroid game, and that's what you get, and it feels so good. Like, yes, the later bosses were harder, but the learning curve at the beginning was so difficult that it didn't necessarily feel that way by the time I got there comparatively, I guess. Yeah. It didn't feel any harder than the beginning of the game did, I suppose.
And those checkpoints are, oh my God, like a lifesaver. I would not have played this game if like they did the typical boot you back to the last save point. Like that would have been the death knell of this game.
You're 100%.
That's no doubt. Yeah. I'm really excited to play like, again, I kind of like, in a panic was like, oh, you guys are about to talk about it on the podcast, so I better play a little bit before we chat about it. But like, I'm excited to dedicate some time to this one.
Yeah, it is. It's great. It like to the point where in a different year, it probably would be my number one game. really, really good. I'm going to play through the other 2 Metroid games, Zero Mission and Samus Returns, probably relatively soon, probably next year at some point, even though that's not a resolution game.
It definitely has me. It definitely has me wanting to play Samus Returns for sure. I really love the the fluidity and the speed of the movement and stuff. It feels really nice.
It feels
there are
great.
only
Dread.
True to a remake of the Game Boy version. There are only like 4 enemies in the entire game, but it's a good game. Goddamn.
Yeah, I'm into it. Okay.
Yeah.
Enough talking about Metroid Dread, although people should play it.
Yes.
The number 1 game, no surprise, is Ori and the Will of the Wisps. This is something
I was waiting for NBA 2K, but
no. Even though it's a game I play literally every single day because of the daily check-ins, but that's kind of like we kind of have an understanding more than like a loving relationship, I think.
Yeah.
No 2K. No, that's enough 2K. No, Ori and the Will of the Wisps was just a phenomenal Metroidvania experience. And I'm not even a big Metroidvania guy, but look at the
look at your list.
Like, come on. It just, I don't know. It just lined up this year. And Will of the Wisps, man, they nailed this game. It's like the combat aspects they added to the engine that was Blind Forest was enough to put it over the edge for me, because that's what I loved about Dread too, is like this like frenetic combat focus and just like the momentum of your movement. And I think Will of the Wisps does that and maybe even a more satisfying way, honestly, from my perspective. And on top of that, I think Will of the Wisps might have just a little bit more of the just the high-end budget polish. The visuals are just beautiful, and like the soundtrack is so sweeping, and it's like it's also a game that's telling a story that continued from a previous game, just like Dread was. Going from Blind Forest into Will of the Wisps. And it ends in a very satisfying way too, as does Dread. I think I would recommend Will of the Wisps if you have an Xbox or a Switch, to anybody that has any passing interest in Metroidvanias. I think it got its due. It got really good reviews, but still a relatively new series, and I'm not sure a ton of people have necessarily played it compared to some of the other games we talked about, like Metroid games. And I think it's at least on that echelon, if not greater. It's real good. Will of the Wisps in particular.
Everything you brought up about it when we chatted about it recently was like, oh yeah, this is like anything that I felt like Blind Forest was lacking. It seemed like they just like addressed that in the most positive way possible.
I think so. And I mean, I've talked before about like I get lost sometimes in Metroidvanias. The maps can be too sweeping or whatever. And even in Dread, I find myself like checking the maps pretty often, which is fine because the rest of the game is awesome. But in Will of the Wisps, it just felt so much more natural, like getting around and going to places. And I don't know, I didn't have to do that the same way. And like, there's like quality of life things that they could do here that maybe they felt constrained in Dread, where they had to be like, this is a Metroid game. You know, we've already set the standards of you have save rooms in these particular places. And, you know, this is how we have to gate off things, versus Will of the Wisps was a lot more like open-ended. And you could kind of progress in your own ways, either with these like side quests or the main quests, and you know they kind of blended in such a way that sometimes you weren't necessarily sure which one was side quest or main quest, and they all felt just as good.
That's awesome. That's awesome to hear, because I a lot of times like get sidetracked in Metroidvanias to the point where I'm like, am I doing the right thing? Like I don't know. Like everything about that you've mentioned about Ori and the Will of the Wisps is like, I need to finish Blind Forest so I can get to this one.
Yeah, and even if you don't finish Blind Forest, I think it's okay to start Will of the Wisps. I think it's a little bit more rewarding if you can, but if you can't, I don't want that to stop someone from playing Will of the Wisps, basically.
Okay.
Because they do a nice enough job of introducing you at the beginning of Will of the Wisps, as they do in Blind Forest. You know, both games start very effectively.
Oh yeah, we talked about it with Blind Forest for sure.
Yeah. So, Ori and the Will of the Wisps. Play it.
Yeah.
Resolution time. Let's talk about resolution games.
Did we want to do any of Kevin's? Did we get all your?
Yes.
The only other one I was gonna mention was, and I thought maybe you were gonna throw this one to the mix, Randall, was Boba. From Connor Grail on the music, and then Dalton Levy and Casey McNeil, and we got really into this one when it released.
It's so good.
And especially with that level editor in the mix, that was what almost put me over the top. Is like, especially when I did that stream with our pal Purple Thickman, where like he made a bunch of levels, and then
you played.
I streamed right after and played his levels. Like, and then like even just the fact, like I only made 2 levels, but like just the sake of like being able to make a level and like again like being able to just like, the only time I've ever done anything like that is like messing around in Mario Maker or whatever, and being able to make a level like with this super simplistic, like pretty stripped down, to be honest, like there's not, you can't do all that much, but like the core mechanics are just like, you can really make some cool, interesting levels. And the fact that you can do it with a cursor and like there's just some cool bumping tunes that like, and nothing against, like they do a great job with the, with the music in Mario Maker when you're making a level, but like, there's just something a little extra special about like, hey, I'm making this like this weird little indie 2D side-scrolling platformer that I can like play in my browser and make levels for in my browser and share with my friends at the click of a button. Like, it's kind of crazy what they pulled off here. And I don't know if it's still in development, like if they're planning on expanding it as like a full release kind of thing, or
I hope so.
Whatever. I know that they were kind of looking to do that potentially, but I just that was the one game that was kind of on the cusp of like, I don't know, I just kind of leaned away from the action-packed precision platforming, I guess, but that was the one game that between, and the soundtrack, I know I've said it like 3 times now, but it's on Spotify,
worth repeating,
and on many other platforms. Like you can listen to it, you can purchase it on Bandcamp. Like nice, heck yeah, it is something I listen to regularly.
Yep.
Connor Grail, great music all around, not just Boba, but nailed it. Yeah, that was the one game, because I know we mentioned it in the Discord recently that we were like, it was right there, it was in the mix, so that I had. But yeah, let's get into the resolutions, Randall.
All right. So my resolution, and this is something, again, I basically use resolutions to force me to do things.
Yep,
so,
same. That's what it's there for. Yep, it's 100%.
That's it. It's taking your vitamins. This is take your vitamins time, but in a positive way. Which again, I guess taking your vitamins is that anyway. But so my resolution game is Panzer Dragoon Saga, and it's not just because it's.
All right.
My man said Sega Saturn.
Bringing out the big dragon guns.
Yes, the biggest dragon guns. And it's not just, this is not just like some show off move. This is like, what the hell am I doing? Like, Tina bought me this game to play years and years and years ago before it cost ungodly money. Like, even then, it was a lot of money.
It was like the hot ticket on Saturn, for sure, yeah.
But it was like $200 a lot payment, and not like whatever the hell it is now. Over
not like you need another job just to put down a down payment on this job.
I'm like, what am I doing? Like, and everyone's talking about like disc rot in games and stuff. Like, these old games can like start not working over time because they just age out, these discs in particular. I have the opportunity to play this if I would just hook up my retro systems, which I have not done since we moved into this house practically 3 years ago, and there's no excuse for that. So this is forcing me to set up my retro setup over here downstairs, and hook up my Sega Saturn, and finally play through what some people consider to be one of the best RPGs ever created. And I regardless, I'm a big Panzer Dragoon fan, period. So like this, I need to do it. It's going to happen in 2022. I'm playing Panzer Dragoon Saga.
Hell
nice. Yeah. It sounds like, it's one of those games that like in my mind, I just think of as like a historical tick mark, is like, oh, I know what it is. I know what it's kind of like, but it's like, why not play it? You literally have access to it. Yeah.
Never been re-released. They lost the freaking source code to this game. Ugh. Like, I owe it to myself to play it. It's sitting. I have to do it. So I'm going to do it.
And you got to hook up. It feels not right that you don't have a retro setup.
It's
at
very
that,
wrong.
or at that house, at that apartment. But yeah,
yes, having a child does that. But I will make it happen now.
Shuffles priorities a bit.
yeah.
No, it is now time to get that set up. It's going to happen.
Nice.
I'm excited. Yeah, and I'm excited to Panzer Dragoon. I feel like we might see a little rebirth of that series. You know, every now and then they do a little re-release or a little something like. They haven't totally abandoned it.
Yep. So, no, they got that remake of the first one. I want to say they at least talked about remaking Zwei, if that's how you pronounce it.
Yep.
Panzer Dragoon 2, which is awesome. That's a great game in a similar vein to like the Star Fox type of games.
Yep.
Really good. So I'd be very pleased if they follow through with remaking that too.
Same. What about you, John?
So my resolution game is the one that for the longest time when I was playing my resolution or planning on playing my resolution game for 2021, I thought it was this game.
I thought it was this game as well.
Until we went back and checked the tapes, and I was like, oh, I picked Murder by Numbers as my resolution game. I guess that's the one I need to play. And it was a good game. I'm glad I did. But I'm rolling it back, and I am going to play Dicey Dungeons, a game I bought before we did our Game of the Year podcast.
I think both of us bought it like when it launched on Switch. We were like, "Oh, it's like 10% off. Let's get it." And we've like every now and then, every few months, I feel like we're like, "Oh yeah, we got to talk about Dicey Dungeons." So I'm not going to do this as my resolution, but I'm totally piggybacking off of this with you.
And there's no reason for me again talking about we're forcing ourselves to play games we know we will like.
And that we own already.
Yes,
purchased and own and will like.
Yep,
like it's a Terry Kavanagh joint. It's a Chipsel joint. Like this is. Honestly, I listened to the soundtrack again today to get ready for this, and I was like, God damn it, this is just an unbelievable soundtrack. It's so good. Chipsel just fucking knocked it out of the park.
Just great style in general on that game.
Everything about it. So,
and it sounds like it's leading into that mode that I've been in all this year, at least, of like the just kind of turn-based.
You were talking about like all those
no
games?
Time constraints. Yeah,
exactly.
Oh, I'm so ready for this game.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
And you? What's on your plate?
So I was just like last year. I was kind of torn between two, and last year I think I actually posed the question of like, which one should I pick, guys?
Yeah. I'm
not going to do that this time. I picked between the two, but the one I was thinking about maybe was Horizon Zero Dawn, just because I was like, I'm in the mood to play like a 3D AAA, if you will. I'm just in the mood to kind of like get lost in a game, kind of.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I was looking at my Switch games. I've never played. I've dabbled, but I've pretty much never played a Luigi's Mansion game. And Luigi's Mansion 3, I have not played at all. Like I've played just a tiny bit of the GameCube one, and I have the 3DS one as well. And I played just for like a minute, not a minute, but I popped it up and got started and did my usual thing. Where like, oh, okay, cool, I get the hang of it. I'll play this someday.
Yep.
And I've never really spent any really great deal of time with those games. And I do think everything I've seen from Luigi's Mansion 3 and when you guys talked about it too was just like. And especially just like getting the HD treatment on the Switch. And like not that the original GameCube one doesn't look great, but like this one really kind of like it looks sharp.
It does.
And everything I've seen in action and all the little cutscenes and the interactive like
to go back. Like
me too.
Please do this. I'm so excited.
And again, it's like not so much the turn-based kind of gameplay, and there is a little bit of action going on, but it seems like the kind of game that you can just cozy like the Luigi's Mansion games in my mind are almost like if you had full control of your character in a point and click game, kind of like that's sort of how they feel to a degree, at least like the puzzles are like, it's, you do have a character or an avatar that you're moving around the room. But at the end of the day, like you're not really although I don't know, some of those like vacuum boss battles in the first one can be kind of that, I don't want a blanket statement and say it's just a point and click game, but yeah, it is kind of a more leisurely stroll of an experience, or at least it seems that way. And I just decided like there's a bunch of games like we were talking about it before we started recording too. Like I finally popped in my WarioWare cartridge. And like, you know, there's a bunch of games I have on my Switch that I just haven't even popped in yet. And I thought about Banner Saga as well, the Banner Saga trilogy, because that's just more tactics action. But yeah, I think Luigi's Mansion's the way to go. I need to dip my toes in that series. Yeah.
Hell yeah.
And do some AAA Nintendo. It's been a while since I've gone kind of full tilt on their stuff outside of the big releases, you know.
That's sweet. I love it.
Yeah. But I'm excited. I'm excited to dig into that. Hopefully I won't wait till the last possible second like I did this year. But yeah, I think we're pretty much good to wrap it up there. If you guys are good to call it for this year. But yeah, thanks for tuning in. Thanks for listening. As always, everyone, I guess another kind of good year for 2021, as good as it can be, at least on the video game front. But yeah, thanks for listening. As always, we're on pursuingpixels.com. We're on the internet. We're pretty much anywhere. And yeah, I don't know what else to say, but we'll catch you next week, and take care, everybody.
See ya.
Bye-bye.
Man, I fumbled that outro.
It's fine.
Oh man,
dude, that Panzer.
But totally fine.
I want to play.
I remember when Tina
bad.
got you that Panzer Dragoon, because she got you Zwei at the same time, right?
So it was kind of ridiculous, especially looking back. She got all three Saturn games. I had already had a copy of the first one. But of course, as we know, retro collecting, then you could say which one's the better copy in condition. And
right.
So she got the trilogy set for $200 on eBay shipped, which was just like a crazy good price, even at that time.
Almost even for like getting them new.
Yeah.
Like that's almost like
a
normal price.
And like we did not have any money at that time, so it was like mind blowing to see that she just like sneak got that for me. It was like wow, and I'm glad she did, because otherwise it would have been completely unaffordable to ever get.
Right,
it just wouldn't have been. I'm not going to spend $1,000 on a video game. It's not going to happen.
No. Yeah,
right.